Slideshow. Setup slideshow? No.
You just
Slideshow. Play from start.
From start.
Okay, and then this should do the thingy, and it does. Okay, here
so
you
how do I
go.
go backwards? Up.
Just press the top button's the laser. The middle button is forward, and back button's back.
Okay. Hello. I'm in the toy business. I started out as an inventor, and I used to come to these meetings. I used to run IACT, not for 10 years, but for some time.
It's
And
not a competition.
I had an agent, and I used to present ideas to him, and he started taking me with him on his presentations to toy companies, and I started to learn the ropes. And because of IACT, I had members come to me and say, well, look, I have a game. Can you take it in? And I kind of morphed into being an agent inventor. So that's what I do now. I'm an inventor and an agent. Many of the ideas that come to me are completely finished, and I represent them as an agent. A lot of people come to me, and I collaborate with them, and we work together to present, and everything in between. Anyway, this is an old picture, but a few more games than that. So where do I aim this thing? Just
Not at me.
if I hit it. What's the...
It's
Oh, wait, that's it. Oh, this.
the other way.
There we go. These are the stuff I brought to market. These are the games I brought to market, and toys. There's one on there that Kevin is involved in, Pickles to Penguins. Where is it? Up there. Okay, there are two basic ways to make money in the toy business. One is self-manufacturing, and the other is licensing to a manufacturer. I'm going to be talking about the second one. When you do a licensing deal, you get a standard royalty, usually of about 5% of the wholesale price. And the formula is basically, if a toy sells for $10 at Walmart, Walmart paid $5 for that, and you get 5% of the $5 and split it with your agent. It's usually, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but it basically translates into roughly 2.5% of retail, and there are exceptions to this number. If you're pretty good on your feet, yes?
Could you say a few words about keystoning?
Yeah, it's just a...
What is that?
Basically, it's just a term for 5% is the wholesale price, 10% is the retail price. Keystoning is the concept of doubling the wholesale price. Kevin probably could talk to that more than I can. Kevin does the one I crossed out. He manufactures and has created a toy company, a game company.
Why is it called keystoning? I mean, in all kinds of markets, the retailer doubles or triples the price.
Well, that's just a very rough formula. If you're trying to figure out, okay, what could this be at retail? Okay, what does it cost in, usually China? It costs $1 in China, let's see, and then that formula is 6-to-1 for the wholesale, and then it's double for the retail.
I was wondering why it's called keystoning.
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
That's a great question. Next time I do this, I'll try to find out. And there's lots of exceptions. I mean, there are lots of exceptions on the royalty rate, lots of exceptions on the wholesale to retail. This is just roughly what it is if people are curious. This is it, okay. Oops, I'm going backwards. Sorry. If you're pretty good on your feet, you're a pretty good salesperson, you're a good glad-hander, good schmoozer, you could probably go and approach these toy companies yourself. Some of the companies won't let you. Hasbro, Mattel, the big ones, they really ask you to sign their submission agreement. And it basically says, it used to be, well, you have a few years after we've seen it, and you still own it, even if you haven't patented it. It's a very much of a fashion and fad-oriented business. A lot of things aren't really patentable, especially games. Those are, you might try to file a process patent, but what happens is somebody works around it. If you have a spinner, somebody says, well, I'm going to use dice, and boom, new game. So many years ago, back before, websites, I used to be on listservs with other inventors that we would talk about, well, should we patent? And it didn't make sense to patent a game, a process. there were exceptions, and I'll get to that in a minute. But so you sign Hasbro, Mattel's, and submission agreement. As I said, back in the day, they gave you a couple of years where they saw your idea and they trusted you. You know, they didn't share it or steal it. Now it's like, we own you. You sign it, and it's like, you know, you basically, you know, some of them try to be fair, but they're really harsh. And you have a choice. You either, you know, spend a fortune on a patent for something that's really not patentable, or you, you know, hope that you don't get ripped off. I have to say, I know a lot of very good people at both Hasbro and Mattel and a lot of other toy companies. And I know people who've been ripped off by both those companies. Maybe it wasn't intentional, but it happened. And, you know, and that's the other thing about filing a patent for a game is, so somebody works around and you try to sue, you end up paying a fortune in a lawsuit. So, you know, where you would file a patent would be for something like, well, as I say, I'll tell you in a minute, but the Pop-O-Matic dice. The game Trouble has a dice. You throw the die, and
that's a special thing.
Yeah, and the game isn't all that exciting with the die. But if you have the little dome with the dice in it, and you push it down and go boop, and all of a sudden you're patenting that. You're patenting the Pop-O-Matic device. Agents take from 35 to 50% of advances and royalties. It seems really harsh compared to publishing and other businesses, but it's the going rate. If you want to Google agency percentage, toy agent, that's what they take. And we do work our tails off. So I'm going backwards. Sorry about that. But the toy business is in trouble, and the newest trouble is tariffs, the Chinese tariffs. There's lectures at every toy fair about the tariffs and the problems with the tariffs and what are we going to do and how can we plan. And it seems to me what's happening, from what I understand what's happening, and Kevin could probably talk to this too, is that the retailers aren't taking the hit. The toy companies are taking the hit and swallowing some of this because the retailers, you know, won't take the hit. There are mergers everywhere. There are safety issues. I was talking to Bill earlier about choke tube. If you're inventing for preschoolers, you have to drop whatever the parts of the toy are through a thing called a choke tube. Yeah. And I don't even know, somebody gave me one. He made one for me. I'm sure you could probably Google it and find one. But if your target is 3 or under, or one day younger than 3 and under, nothing can drop through the choke tube.
And it's larger than you think, because a lot of parents have them now. They're like this big.
Yeah, and it is. And Hasbro apparently has a very big one. So they're very, very, very safety conscious. They all get sued. You know, it's a problem. There's a fact called age compression. When I was a little girl, when I was 10 years old, I played with fashion dolls. Now you stop playing with fashion dolls at 3. Boys stop playing with toy trucks at 5. They all want tablets now. And so kids are starting more adult type activities at younger ages. And of course, screens. So, this is a question I always ask. If you're going to invent a toy or game, who are you inventing for? Anybody tell me who you're inventing for? Who you're inventing for?
Do you want to, you could invent, well, it depends, for the market or for like for ours, we picked a specific, well, we didn't, it would be something like for like guidance counselors and therapists, but
Okay.
it could also work for.
So you're saying the end
families.
user.
The end user, but really probably want to make it for like the Mattels, but they're going to redo it anyway if they pick it up, aren't they?
They do, but that's not who you're inventing for if you're in the toy business. Who are you
Yourself?
inventing for?
Balding middle-aged guys.
No, unless they are a certain category. Anybody else who you're inventing for?
Parents.
Kevin knows who you're
Oh,
inventing
well, I'd say the buyer.
That's right. That's who you're inventing for. You're inventing for the retailer. I'd be happy to give you a handout if you'd like. Just give me your email address and I'll mail you the presentation. Retailers are, especially Walmart and Target, the big box stores have very, very, very small margins. So the stuff has to move off the shelf. It has to move. So that you have to invent so it will move. One way that will happen is if you get a license like Star Wars. Okay, you could slap it almost on anything and it will move. Another way is to have a brand like Scrabble. So you could say Scrabble Slam or Scrabble Slap or Scrabble this or Scrabble that. You've got to get the license, but you can do that. Those two things will move your product. A third way to promise Walmart that your product will move is to guarantee them an advertising budget. And if you say, here, we got $1 million ad buy, that will add to the price of the toy or the game. And then it has to be worth the price. So a card game, that's not going to happen. You know, what makes it worth the price is a plastic thing with a battery in it, with moving parts. You know, so it's a tough sell. And I loved it. I want to come to your speech. Kevin's done it, so.
So if you don't have those things, are you better off just marketing it yourself to smaller places?
Well, you have to go to smaller places and say, you know, how can you, a lot of it has to do with package design, how it looks, where you get placed. Are you at the cash register? Do you have a really provocative packaging? Do you have can you pick up the box and flip it over and look on the back and understand how to play? A lot of that is important. So if the retailer wants it to move. So you've got to show a retailer something that's going to move. And if you don't have the big three things for the box stores, the ad budget or the license or the brand, then you have to have wonderful packaging and there's also social media, viral campaigns, word of mouth. A lot of people go to Florida and do spring break, and they set up, game testing on spring break, and it's a very, very difficult process, and it has to be a good game. Yes, you get on the shelf, and word of mouth, it's a good game, and people start, and then it establishes, it becomes a brand. Because if it's playable and gets played again and again, it becomes a brand. And then you leverage the brand. And, naming other things with the same brand name or part of the same brand name. That's how that works. So, the licensing industry is really a lot of what toy inventing is all about. Star Wars, everything. Barbie, everything. Hot Wheels.
Frozen 2. Frozen 2.
Yeah, Frozen. Movie prop. And the thing that's difficult is the lead time. Most people who aren't in the toy business don't know what the big hit movie's going to be next year. I don't know either, actually. You go to the licensing show, and I think Godzilla is a perfect example, and everybody's pitching Godzilla as being the next big hot movie, and Godzilla, the merch and the toys, and in fact, the licensing people from the toy companies work with the movie producers to actually design the animated characters to have the kind of articulation that the toy inventors the toy manufacturers are able to create. So let's say they have an animated dinosaur, and they say, well, it costs a lot if we have to make his head go like that. So if we make his head go like that, we could save money and make a margin. I mean, literally, they have conversations about the merch and the toys and everything, and it's very much. And you, the regular, ordinary inventor, just go, how do I get involved? And yet, it's helpful. You could actually go to a company that has, for example, Star Wars license, and Star Wars, Disney now would award that license in many, many, many different categories. Small games, small toys, medium toys, electronic toys. So the Star Wars, Disney might have, 200 entities that are holding the rights of that license. And so you could go to one of them and say, I have something that will work with Star Wars. And you could actually go to get clip art of the Star Wars look and logo type, paste it on your thing. You're not stealing it, you're using it for one use, and that's to pitch a Star Wars idea. It limits you to the companies that have the Star Wars license. You could always tear it off and put Star Trek on it if it works for both. But the idea is that you can pitch your pitch your idea and say it's for this license, and it might help you sell it. Another thought might be to bring the license with you. A good example is, remember the 4 Dummies, the black and yellow books, chess for dummies, cooking for dummies, whatever. There was a story, there was a game that came out about 15 years ago, Chess for Dummies. And the guy brought the 4 Dummies. He called the 4 Dummies people. He brought the 4 Dummies license and the black and yellow packaging and the logo type with him to Pressman Toys and sold Chess for Dummies. It was 2 pawns, 1 rook, 1 knight. It was like 5 by 5, board kind of thing. But he brought the license. And I have a lot of inventors call me and say, I have a really great baseball card game. And I'll say, if you can bring me the MLB, man, I'll show it. And that's easier said than done. But something like 4 Dummies might be gettable, for the everyday person. So, so you might want to say, well, okay, I want to get something in Mattel's line. Yeah, man?
To get one of these licenses, to license like a name.
Yeah.
Does the inventor typically have to pay anything up front, or is it all a cut out of ultimate sales?
I think, well, I'd love to know what kind of deal the guy who brought 4 Dummies got for Pressman. I know that the companies who acquire the license through an inventor, my guess is, and I don't, not for sure, but I think the company would pay the licensor, not the inventor. But the guy who brought 4 Dummies, I don't know how that deal was cut, to tell you the truth. I'd love to find out how that deal was cut.
The guy that did the chess game, he bought the 4 Dummies.
He brought it in with him. And actually, I was working with a partner, and we were working on the USA Today little cartoon. I can't remember what it was called. They have a cartoon every day, and we actually spoke with USA Today, and what we had agreed to was that we had their permission to use their logo and their cartoon, and should there have been a deal cut, they would have gone on with it and have negotiated separately with the companies we were pitching to. That's probably what happened with 4 Dummies. There's all kinds of ways to go in with the license. One thing you want to do, and it's useful, is to find out what licenses they have, and then say, well, I want to get a Mattel. They've got like all these Octonuts and all these other licenses. I'll go in with that, and
Did the guy restrict the license? You could just for chess. I know that many of those 4 Dummies books.
I don't know what he did. I don't know how he cut the deal. But my guess was he said I'm going to go into a toy company.
Yeah.
And I would like to use your license, and the licensor said, sure, it's a money opportunity for us. And I don't know how they worked out the deal. But he went in with the license. Whether he paid for it, I don't think he paid for it. I think he went in with permission to pitch the license. But I don't know the full story, so. Yes.
Is there a rough number? Is that 5% you mentioned before applicable there? So we're looking at 5% to the.
Well, that's a great question.
5% for you as the.
If you go in with, like, for instance, let's say you go in with an item that would work for Sesame Street. Maybe you thought about Sesame Street when you went in there, or you didn't, and the company said, "Oh, this would work with Sesame Street." Either way, they take half your royalties. Boom, you're down to 2.5% now. And if you roll your eyes and go, oh my God, that's a big chunk, but, Tickle Me George wouldn't have been the same as Tickle Me Elmo. And I think there were like
working from that same pot of, say, 5% that gets split between you and the other license.
Yeah, and some take more than others.
Yeah.
And Sesame Street is famous for taking a big chunk. So that's how that works. But, Mattel still has the World Wrestling. A guy was telling me he had some tangled up, bent pieces of metal that was one of those kind of logic puzzles, and he dropped it and they reformed, and he just put wrestling. He just colored in like wrestlers, and he'd drop it and it looked like they were wrestling, and he sold it to Mattel. I mean, boom, So, and I know another story about a woman who. Designed remember that, I can't remember, Topsy Tail? It was a hair product that you could put your hair in a ponytail with it.
Oh, where you put it through the thing. and
Yeah, you put it through
yeah.
the thing, and it was
That
called,
was
I
really
think,
big for a while.
it was huge. And this woman, she belongs to the Inventors Association of Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
sold it to, one of those, made for TV. And then she kept the rights and sold it again and made royalties, and she sold it for Barbie. So she made money on the Barbie version. So, and that's another thing to think about. If you invent something that's not related to toys, maybe you could make it work with Hot Wheels. Maybe it'll work with Barbie. So, anyway, as I just said, it's so much in the business now, the licensing. So I think I've already talked about this stuff, but I remember when the first time I presented to Mattel, and I finally got in the door, yay, and they said, "What category is it in?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, is it Hot Wheels or Barbie?" And a couple other categories, and if it wasn't in any of those categories, we don't want to see it. They're very much more and more brand oriented, even as much as they try to say we're trying to be, think outside the box. And Mattel had a subgroup of all the categories that you would have to choose from, and it was the box. And then they had the Toy Box TV show, and they still end up sort of sticking with what sells, and you can't blame them. I think the last time I gave this speech, Mattel was the second largest clothing manufacturer in the country for Barbie. Of course, when I was a kid, we dressed our Barbies, and we bought kids Barbie outfits for Christmas and birthdays and stuff. Now you just buy a new Barbie. If she's a doctor, you buy the doctor Barbie. The average kid, I think, the average 3-year-old has 9, something like that. It's crazy. But you don't have to invent for entertainment licenses, obviously. It's depressing to think that you do. I mean, they love clever, mechanical items. They would love robotic concepts. Virtual reality is really hot right now in the toy business. And they like low tech too. And card games are exploding. Ever since Cards Against Humanity and that Kickstarter, and Exploding Kittens, card games have absolutely taken off, especially a little bit adulty, edgy. Don't be too complicated. Don't have too many rules. 1 page is probably enough. An inventor came to me with 10 pages of rules, and I just said, you know what? I don't even want to. I said, I can't even imagine trying to present this. How am I going to tell the toy company how this plays? You literally need to be able to describe the game in just a couple sentences. I'm talking games, but also toys. There's our Pop-O-Matic dice. One thing I can't even show anymore is a game where you roll the die, move on a board, and pick a card. Can't do it. It's called a path game, where you move on a path. They don't want it. That's been done. It's been invented. Buying and selling real estate, been done. Stock market games, been done. Roll, move, and pick, we call it. Roll the die, or spin the spinner, move, pick a card. No more. No, they don't want it. So what you want to do is come up with a different play pattern, something different, novel. And that's really hard, and they also like devices, and they could be logical devices or physical devices, like the Pop-O-Matic dice. Not all that exciting, but it really is fun to use and very distinctive. There's another game. I wish I had a picture of it. It's called Funglish, and the guy had an easel. He probably took his kid's school picture easel, when he presented it. And it had little shelves with 3 rows of cards on the easel. And one person would have to have another person guess a word. Let's say the word is eraser, okay? And the only clues that the giver of the clues were allowed to give were word cards that were already arrayed out on the table. So these 3 rows, the top row said not, the next row said totally, and the third row said kinda. So he wrote not writing, he had the word writing, totally pink, kind of soft, or something like that. So it was a device, and it allowed, it allowed the gameplay, and it was something to put in the center of the table. So they love that stuff. Devices, they love those. Since I wrote this like 2 years ago, edgy, sexy games are hot. In more ways than one. They are very, very popular. You don't want to do an election 2020 game because the lead time to manufacture is too long. I've had people come to me with Trump games and stuff like that, and don't be too topical. It takes too long to get on the shelf. I had a wonderful invention. This guy came to me like 3 months before the World Cup, and it was a brilliantly designed World Cup game. And it just no time, couldn't do it. People say, how do you know you can trust people? Well, you don't 100% know. Years and years and years of doing business with them is how you know. And that's why it's helpful to get an agent. Takes time. There are some unscrupulous people. When you go present your game to these companies that will let you in, don't say, everybody in the neighborhood loves it. Everybody, all the kids in the neighborhood love it, because the kids in the neighborhood want to please you. And you don't know whether they really love it or not. So you say stuff like, I could just see, you give them a provocative package idea. You do that. So, that's actually not true anymore. Hasbro might be interested in a strategy game. I know Mattel is. Mattel is interested in a 2-person strategy. 2 years ago, you couldn't sell one to anybody. So those kinds of things come and go too. There's a company in France that I've sold to that will not look at a game that only has 2 players. It has to have up to 6 players, but not 2. So you kind of have to know what they're selling now, so you don't look like a doofus when you go in there. You got to act like you got to go in there knowing something. Every now and then, though, that whole rule gets thrown away. There was a company called Ertl that sold nothing but John Deere tractors and trucks and all the green John Deere stuff. And then they came out with that one year, the Bumbleball. It has a weighted arm inside of it and bounces all over the place. I don't know who sold it. I don't know who had the nerve to go in there and sell that idea to Ertl, but it was one of their biggest hits. But, if you go in there presenting your game, don't argue. If they say, no, not for us. It's just like the folks do on Shark Tank. Thank you, thanks, Or else they don't want to see you again. That guy always fights with me, I don't want to see him, So you just want to be pleasing and, But working prototypes are always the best. But more and more, toy companies are satisfied with what we all call fake video. And that is, thank you, Doug. The product that we were trying to sell was an external Etch-a-Sketch. The little nib that scratches the gray stuff off? Well, our idea is to turn it into a magnet and have an outside pen that went straight down. So here's our video. See, this is how it works. We actually built a working prototype, but here we are with a fake video. This is not an external Etch-a-Sketch. It is, in fact,
Maybe
you can't really see the hands.
I'm going to move it, yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually no Etch-a-Sketch. It's just a picture.
It's a picture of an Etch-a-Sketch on a piece of foam core. Okay? The back's cut out so that you can put the magnet under it. And I'm down there going like this. Somebody's standing over the shoulder of the person who's pretending to turn the knobs. And that's what we pitched. Okay, we could show that again now that you know what it is. It took maybe 2 hours to do this. and we didn't have to break the glass and get that metal stuff all over the rug, and I do a lot of fake videos. One of my friends invented one of those electronic balls it looked a lot like what you just saw, and he had little Dixie cups, cut off and it's glued all over the thing, and then somebody off stage is going, pew, 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 pew. You can do that. You have to be able to tell them how it works, though. There's an actuator, there's a weighted hammer, there's this, there's that, the other thing. You don't have to get into great detail, but there has to be some proof of concept or knowledge of what you're doing. So you can see, you can't really see your hands, but it's a picture. It's not a real etch a sketch. So that's a fake video. Okay, thank you, Doug.
Sure, let me get you back. Let's see. Is it F5?
Or just the word slideshow up there.
All right, let's do that.
And with games, I have to tell you, I've done a lot of animated stuff, just animated games where the pieces move by themselves, and but what really is the most powerful presentation is happy people using product. People howling at this thing that happens when you do the game. And people having fun and people playing. They want to see that. And then that means you make a product video. And that you have to be you don't have to be a fabulous videographer, but you do have to cut to the chase. I've learned watching inventor relations, people go like this, get to the point. I don't want to know demographics. I want to know what it is. And you get right to that point and try to make it 60 seconds or less. I do all my videos with my phone. I used to have like a camera and everything. I do a lot of animation in PowerPoint, and oh, here we go. There's a magnet. What about Kickstarter, right? What about Kickstarter? There's two things you could do with Kickstarter. You start a toy business and you get money from Kickstarter. The video, from the people I know who've done that, the video is going to cost at least, $20,000 to do a really good video, unless you're really good at it. And that's to get money to start a business. But you have to understand when you're manufacturing yourself, you have to understand how to package, how to get to retail, what to do about inventory, setting up for just-in-time inventory, doing electronic payments, all that stuff. You have to know that, or be willing to learn and be willing to pretty much put your whole heart and life into it. Or what a lot of toy companies are doing now, and what you might want to do, is don't plan on starting a business, get a Kickstarter, get orders, and take those orders to a toy company. All right, I got 20,000 orders for this card game. There's a market for it. And even toy companies are doing that to stimulate retailer. So, back to patenting, and Mike's a patent attorney. As I said before, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to protect a board game because it's so easily worked around. It's a process. Patent, you change a couple elements and you've got a whole new game. What makes sense to patent is the thing like the Pop-O-Matic die. And the fact that the toy industry and the toys and games are fad and fashion oriented. They come and go. Things happen quickly. I myself have been ripped off by some big toy companies. I could have sued, but then what do I tell my clients? I can't go to Mattel now. I can't go to Hasbro now because they don't. I've sued them. What do you do? Can I afford to sue them? One of my friends did successfully sue Mattel. They ripped off his. I don't think they. Frankly, I don't think they really did rip him off. But it was action heroes. They were firemen and policemen, little characters, and that just amazing timing coincidence came out right after 9/11, and my friend had shown them similar products, and he won the lawsuit, but it turned out to really backfire in a really big way, not only to him, but to all the inventor community. Because what happened was, he ended up, they appealed, and the settlement was way lower. Mattel just slammed on the brakes and created a very egregious submission agreement that basically you just say, well, it's either not see Mattel or sign this awfulness, And it kind of spread in other companies, no more 3-year window, and Hasbro kind of fell in line there, and, things changed. And he now tells me he regrets suing them. It was hard to tell. It's really hard to tell whether they steal your idea. It's even hard to tell whether they stole my idea, even though it seemed as if they did. I couldn't prove it, so, unless you can prove it, and that's tough. Sometimes people go to toy companies and go, could you sign my NDA, my non-disclosure agreement? And some of them will, but many won't. And when they don't, I usually just say, could you just sign that you saw it today? And they'll do that. And I don't know how much that holds up in court. In fact, Mike, NDAs, how strong are they anyway?
Well, I would say if they sign that they saw it, I don't think that would be worth anything.
Right.
But if they sign an actual NDA, it's they breach it, it's breach of contract.
Right, and then you sue them, and you don't have any money to sue them with. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
that's true. But if they're a big company, they may want to just settle it.
Right.
Not go to court. So.
Right. That's true. But I found a little intimidation factor, and say you saw it, and they're like, oh, Good point, though. And then how do you find the toy companies? It's kind of hard to get a toy fair if you're not connected. So, you can join trade associations. They're fabulous. One of the best is ASTRA, American Specialty Toy Retailers Association. They are fabulous. And they have regional meetings and national meetings. And they're wonderful and helpful and, hand-holdy, generous people. Subscribe to the industry news rags. I get the digital ones, but I also get the hard copies. I find I read the hard copies more than I read the digital copies. Most of them are free. All of them are free, as far as I know. Go to the toy fair. Get somebody to get you in. The licensing show, that's where they tell you about the next big movie that you can invent for and look smart when you go into the company that has that license. TriTag is a wonderful show for beginners. It is, I have not gone, but I know the woman who runs it, and it's, and now a lot of experienced inventors are going to that show. It's expensive. It's at a terrible time of year. It's last weekend, the weekend before Thanksgiving in Chicago. So you get O'Hare and bad weather and, traffic, and it's expensive, but it's a really wonderful opportunity to break in. It's a good way to break in. Join LinkedIn, join the toy groups, schmooze, send notes to people, and, helps get an agent, if you don't know people. And what are they looking for? What are the toy companies looking for? We all get wish lists from Mattel and Hasbro and Spin Master. We get wish lists. We get price points. We want it to be this, between this and this retail. Look at what they have now. Look at their brands. They love line extensions of their brands. The way they like to do it, I'll give you an example. Scrabble is a Hasbro product. It's also a Mattel product. Mattel sells it overseas. Hasbro sells it in North America. And so they like line extensions that they can use the Scrabble brand name on. But they don't want tiles and squares with double words and all that. No, it has to be completely different. For example, the game Scrabble Slam is that old internet game. It's a playing cards with letters on them, totally different. And Scrabble's Flash, little cubes that recognize proximity to other cubes. And they have letters on them that change constantly, and you can arrange them to form words, and they know when the words are formed. So nothing like the little tiles or the scorekeeping and all that. So if you're going to do a Scrabble line extension, have it be about spelling, but not with tiles, not on a board, not with cards, not with cubes, no proximity, but something else. And you know what? Go to Walmart. Go to Target. Go to toy aisles and look up and down the aisle and see what's there. Read the backs of the boxes, and then focus on innovation. It doesn't have to be technical innovation, although that's wonderful. In fact, when NASA does their briefs every year, they were telling me that some of the most active people who come and look at the NASA briefs, which is when the NASA shows their new technologies at places like the Javits and stuff, that they see more than any other profession, they see toy inventors. And sometimes toy inventors bring their technology to market before other industries. Okay, you got a deal, now what? So you get a big fat advance. Obviously, if they've paid up front, they have skin in the game. Again, the industry norm is 5%. It could go all over the place. And understand that if an entertainment license is going to be used, they're going to take a chunk of your royalty. And I'll give up the chunk. For Elmo, Elmo will sell. So you want to cap your indemnity. That means, the box falls off the shelf at Walmart and hits a kid in the head. You don't want to be sued. It's ridiculous, but you protect yourself. There are sub-license deals where an American company might buy your game and then they get another company in England, for example, to license your game. Make sure you get a piece of that. Build in milestones. Make sure it ships by Toy Fair 2021. X number of units. If we fall below 20,000 units a year, we have the right to void this contract. You don't say we void it. We have the right to. So you can decide not to. Maybe they're on hiatus. Maybe they're redesigning the package. And work with a reputable company. And I sometimes disobey that rule because, the new companies come along and you're not sure who's good. And it's kind of scary. You're showing them your intellectual property and then, you kind of got trust. You got to trust in the space. I don't know. That's it, I think. Oh, no. I think we're done. Yep. Done. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah. Mary, I remember years ago, the big event each year was this big gathering in Germany.
Yeah, Nuremberg.
Right. You
Spielberg
never
mentioned.
mentioned. Would you say something about that?
Oh, Nuremberg.
Is that still so big?
I haven't been in years. I used to go to Nuremberg Toy Show every year. And usually